All right. Hello and welcome to Just Animals Podcast. I'm Elle, and with me as always is my dad, aka Guy.
Hello, Pod World. It's great to see you or hear you. Thank you for being a listener and a viewer. We appreciate
Okay.
it.
Okay, thank you, NPR. And then back with us for Hyenas
Oh,
Part
you
2.
just got low. What happened?
How about now?
That's better.
Sorry. Back with us for Hyenas
Oh,
Part 2.
yeah. Something's something's
How about
freaking out.
Okay, sorry about that,
That's
guys.
good. That's
Yes,
good.
back for Hyenas Part 2, we have Dr. Dre. Thank you so much for coming back. We are super excited to address a couple more things about these wonderful spotted hyenas. So let's get into it. Their behavior. And now, they're a female-dominated species, correct? I believe we touched on that a little bit.
Absolutely.
Matriarchy.
Yes, matriarchy. Okay. And that they're often most active at night, and they spend about 15 to 80% of their time resting or not moving, and that they're also one of the most social carnivores. Is that true? And from your field experience, can you corroborate that?
Yes, they're technically known as crepuscular, which means active mostly at dawn and dusk.
Okay.
So,
You know,
but you'll see
sorry.
hyenas active at basically any time of the day.
Sure. Sure.
Dr. Dre, I think we may have touched on this the previous one, but being old, OG, I don't remember. Is there any people in Africa or where there
Are there
Are
any?
there any people in Africa, excuse me for my bad grammar, that try to keep these animals as pets?
There are always people who are going to try to keep wild animals as pets. I wouldn't categorize a particular group of people per
Or a
se,
particular
but
continent, even?
right, yeah.
So do the hyenas ultimately turn on them, or do they look at them as an alpha uh, person or male or female? The ones that do
I
keep.
think it would largely depend on the person and the relationship between the hyena and said person. So
Okay.
if you participated in rearing them at a particularly impressionable age, then they will probably look to you as a mom of sorts for the rest of their lives. But like any wild animal, they can have their moments.
So does my
Right.
So
It's a
daughter.
wild. Okay. It's a wild animal. We had Wangan from the Malaysians from the Bruneian sun bear rescue. Sun bears are about the size of Rottweilers, and yeah, because they're a small bear, people think like, oh, how cute! I'm going to turn this small bear into a pet, and then the bear
they grow
starts
up.
doing bear thing, right? And then the bear starts being a bear, and then all of a sudden it's not cute and fun to have a pet bear anymore.
Right, right.
Well, it was
Seems to be a
interesting.
reoccurring theme on this show: people trying to domesticate
Well,
wild
Wild animals,
animals.
yeah.
I just read this thing that PETA now has
Oh, PETA can suck it.
petitioned Hallmark and other card manufacturers not to show chimpanzees in clothing or doing human things because it desensitizes people to the fact that these are wild animals and they're not humans and their whole rap, and it's like, okay, well, all right, fine, all
It's
right.
a cartoon, though.
No, they're showing pictures of chimpanzees wearing clothing or funny hats or playing poker or something like that, and they don't
Well,
want.
there's long been a movement to get animals out of that kind of film industry, showing them as, in movies as and wearing clothes and so forth. Yeah, there are problems depicting animals in that light.
Ah, okay, yeah. I imagine putting a sweater on a hyena would not work very well for most people. I mean, maybe, have you ever tried to, the hyenas you've raised, did you ever try to put sweaters on them or hats?
No,
We just let them be hyenas.
Do you think they would like having a sweater on?
I
Only
think they
llamas,
would enjoy
only
tearing it
llamas like
off and
hats.
ripping it to
So you just
shreds.
talked over her. Hush.
I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
could you repeat that?
I only insofar as they would enjoy ripping it off and tearing it
Right.
into shreds.
Right.
Yeah.
It'd be a fun game. It's like, oh, look, mom put this thing on me and we get to rip it up. Ha ha. Okay. So then I was also noticing too that higher ranking females have greater reproductive success and that offspring receive a rank directly under their mom when they reach maturity. So can you go into like the clan ranking system a little bit?
The ranking system. Well, the
Yes.
hyena ranking system is very interesting for carnivores because it's unusual, but it's virtually identical to what you would see in in monkeys, in rhesus monkeys, for instance, or baboons. So um, females give birth and invest in those cubs. And when those cubs get into a spat with another female's cubs, there's already an established relationship between the adult females. And so those youngsters have to learn their place in society, which they do by whether or not the mother will come to their aid, and help them if it's a lower ranking animal that they're confronting, and maybe not help them as much if it's a higher ranking animal that they're confronting. And
Gotcha.
so through maternal intervention, maternal recruitment, young hyenas learn their place in society. And likewise, every other animal learns that hyena's place in society as being very close in rank to that of its mother.
Okay. Okay. That's very
And
So,
interesting.
with respect to the rest of the animal world, is this a higher social behavior than other animals that you
I
know
mean, like,
of?
yeah, they're the most social carnivores, aren't they?
they are, yeah, they have very large clans, and they belong to what's called an individualized society, meaning that every member of the group knows who every other member of the group is and knows what position they occupy, where they are in the social standing. And so that's that does imply that animals have good capacities for individual recognition,
Oh
um,
yeah.
and the memory that it takes to remember, to remember all of those relationships. The idea being that if you're a member of a large group and you have a pecking order, it's better to know which animal can beat you up without having to actually physically experience that firsthand, right? So
Yeah,
if you know,
absolutely.
oh, that's Betty, daughter of Mary, and they're higher ranking than me, then I don't have to get in a one-to-one combat with any of those descendants, if even if I've never interacted with them before. I can
I,
know through their associations, through their relationships, that that entire matriline is higher ranking than me, and I'm not going to pick a fight with them.
oh, okay. I think your spotted hyena might want to go out.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No,
She,
that's okay.
sorry
What
about
kind of
that.
dog
No,
is it,
no, no, no.
Eliana? Okay, a
She's
bunny?
don't use my slave. Don't use
Yes.
that.
What?
It's a Catahoula hound. That's
Catahoula.
the it's
Catahoula,
the
leopard
yeah
cur.
yeah
Yeah.
the Louisiana state dog. They've got quite the personalities. So that's very interesting. That's so okay. I think they did this with dolphins. This is a little off topic, but can hyenas recognize themselves? Like, did you ever get a mirror and see if they could identify themselves in the mirror?
We actually did that,
Ooh,
not as a
yee.
scientific experiment, but as
Oh.
part of a documentary series, Lions versus Hyenas. It was, what was it? Killer IQ.
Uh-huh.
And so we did give them mirror self recognition tests, but yeah, nothing that I did on a more rigorous experimental
Okay.
basis.
Has
Okay.
Nat Geo ever done a hyena special? I don't
Can you turn
recall.
your phone off, please?
Yeah,
Jesus.
I'm doing that right now.
Um, Nat Geo, I, did they do Eternal Enemies, or am I making that up? I
We
can't
can
imagine that they haven't done a hyena
Yeah,
special,
yeah.
but yeah. So I mean, hyenas have a great visual system, and so while not focused on whether they can recognize themselves, it's likely that they can visually recognize other members of the group. And so, just like humans, who recognize hyenas based on their spot patterns. So,
Oh,
just like
okay.
zebras have their own unique stripe signature, so do
Sure.
spotted hyenas have their unique dot pattern. So
Gotcha.
they're born all black, and then they gradually get lighter, so that, they start getting lighter from their head down through their shoulders, through their torso to their butt, and then the last thing to go are their feet, which is why they still have the dark feet.
Oh, that's right. They
So
have those cute black
yeah,
boots, it
those little
seems like.
boots, right? So basically, the spots on a spotted hyena are what are left of their original natal black coat.
Oh. Okay, so it's like a reverse Dalmatian. They're not born with their spots. Like the Dalmatians are born bald, just white, and then they get the spots, but the hyenas, their coat fades, and that's really
Yes.
interesting. Wow,
Yeah, the
very
coat
cool.
fades, and what's left are the spots. And these spots are a unique identifier of the animals that humans rely on.
Right.
And we had some colleagues who looked at the visual capabilities based on the retina of hyenas and showed that they had the visual acuity to do the same thing. And that's
Wow.
likely to explain the last time you were asking me something about their sensory modality. And I had said, oh, yeah, and vision, because they can actually see a hyena roaming, on the horizon. And if it's a member of their clan, they won't react to it. Yet it's too
Right.
far to smell and it's
Right.
not making any sound.
Right.
Whereas if it's an intruder animal, a member from a neighboring clan, they will get up and react aggressively. And this points to the fact that they can tell individual, or they can at least tell whether you're a group member or not a group member
Right.
from a distance. So based on sight.
Right. Okay. And then is that kind of like, I don't know if this relates to humans, but when you live with other people, you can tell which family member is approaching by the way that they walk. Can they also tell by that too? Or is that hypothesized that they can tell by the way the animal is moving or the way it sounds when it's moving?
I suspect they can tell through lots of different ways and are probably even more sensitive to that than
Than
we
we
know
are.
than we are.
Okay.
So either from gait, from scent, they have a characteristic. Each one will have a scent signature. They
Right.
have a vocal signature. They have a visual, the spot signature. So there's lots of different ways that animals can discriminate between each other, and more so than just discriminate, that they can recognize one individual over
Right.
another.
Right. Like this
So
is Susie,
I have a
Yes.
basically.
question.
Wow.
There was a show on National Geographic about certain animals losing their fear. Do the hyenas learn fear from the social aspect, or is it some innate thing that they have fear? And I don't know if they even have fear, but
They
how?
do. They're very neophobic, and I would say that they're kind of born with that. They're very attentive to detail, and initially very reactive to movement in the environment, sound in the environment. A leaf blowing across. They, as any predator should be, right?
Right.
They pay attention to what's going around them, but they also have some degree of neophobia. So they wouldn't be the first to approach a strange object or a strange situation. They would react with hesitancy, and I would say that comes that they're equipped with that. I don't think that that's something that they pick up socially.
And is
Okay.
that where the giggling would come in when they're unsure? Like, let's say a new object they've never seen appears. Would they start kind of giggling and kind of like walking around
Um,
it?
no, I mean the giggling is really fear and upset. So I
Okay.
think more neophobia would tend to be done quietly, right?
Okay.
If you're not sure what a situation is, your
Right. You don't want
best
to draw
response
attention to yourself.
is to
Right.
freeze,
Right.
investigate, be silent, or get out
Right.
of there, right?
Right.
So giggling is more reserved for a more stressful,
Right.
anxiety-inducing situation. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. And then really quick, one last thing here. Yes. So that I was also reading to aggression. Resident females tend to attack female intruders more than male intruders, and females typically initiate aggressive behavior. They will lunge, push, chase, bite, and pin opponents to the ground. So this, I mean, in totality, is just a female-run society or clan, if you will. So instead of like the male lion defending the pride, it's the female alpha female defending her clan. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, but hyenas.
Oh,
Sorry
It's
for the
okay.
disruption as
Oh,
well.
she's so
Is
cute.
that the same dog?
Yeah,
Yes.
she's
Oh.
just energized by having gone outside and
Do
faced the
are
brisk.
these are hyenas monogamous, or are they just
No,
what?
no,
No.
they're not.
Okay.
They're multi-male, multi-female. But to come back to the question about defense, what's one of the cool things that hyenas do is they form coalitions.
Oh, wow.
And so when they have intruders, it's something that would be akin to clan warfare, right?
Oh
Potential
my
Oh.
god.
intruders walking in on their territory. What the residents will do, and the females will be at the forefront of this, is that they will stand shoulder to shoulder and walk together in a true coalition.
Oh my
So
god.
ears forward, mane kylo erected, the
Right.
weight up in the front,
Looking big
and
and scary, like what
looking
you
big and
want.
scary, and standing next to all of their partners.
Wow. No, thank you.
So presenting this unified front.
Right.
And, males will participate in those coalitions as well, but these things, sorry,
No.
these things tend to be female led. Yeah.
Wow. That's I mean, I would be very intimidated to just see a line of hyenas walking at me. I'd be like, "All right, we're gonna leave now. No, thank you." Wow,
Yeah, no, it's impressive.
have you observed that behavior when you were in the field?
Oh yeah. You can
Oh,
you
that
can
must
observe it in captivity too.
oh, in captivity.
It's a,
Eee,
it's a
okay.
very it's a strong behavior, and whenever there's a confrontation between um, animals, whether they're on either side of a fence or whether they're facing off in Kenya, it's the exact same behavior. They form these
Wow.
coalitions.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And then and the way they like communicate this, like, okay, everyone get in line. They're not saying everyone get in line. It's just they just know.
They
They
know.
just they know there's probably some degree of communication through olfactory cues, social
Right.
sniffing. There's a level of excitement that's coming up. You can, if one individual detects an intruder, others will follow gaze, and it's sort of like a social spreading thing.
Gotcha. Wow, that's nuts. All right, so finally, reproduction. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna let you take the. We're gonna let you just take the reins on this one because
What? No questions?
no,
I'm
yeah, I
just
just no,
I'm
you were
just waiting to hear about the pseudopenis because that's
there. It is. All right,
you
there
know
There
it
it
is.
is.
Yes,
right.
pseudopenises, extended clitorises or clitori. Is it clitorises or clitori? I don't know.
Well, they
Well,
only have one, so it's fine to just say clitoris.
Oh, okay, great.
okay.
Extended clitoris, pseudopenis, very tight birth canal. I mean,
Yeah. So
from what you've explained to me initially and what I've just seen in shows is like it's birth should be impossible for them almost.
yes, it's counterintuitive for sure. So hyenas are the only mammals on the planet who uh, lack a vaginal aperture, and who instead have a penis-like clitoris. So it's elongated. It to the untrained eye looks like a penis, which means that they have one opening, like the male, through which they urinate,
Oh
copulate,
wow.
and give birth, right? So, like
That's a busy
other
hole.
female, are you with me?
Yeah.
Yes, that's a busy
It
hole.
sounds.
Yes.
Yes, it is busy. So I mean, it's basically like if you added giving birth to a male,
Oh
then
No,
my.
thank you.
it's
Hey
one
dad, you want to give
organ
birth?
No.
for
I was
all of
having this
those.
discussion with your mother this morning. I said the human race would come to an end if it were up to me to have a baby.
Oh, she
She's
hears you.
back there in the
But anyways,
mumbling.
yes. So
Shh. Go ahead.
I
Keep going,
can't
so
with
doctor.
that.
Dr.
Right.
Dre.
Yeah, so there is this one opening, and so what's unusual about the female spotted hyena is that her entire birth canal has been rerouted through her clitoris. So it's not it's a urogenital canal, so like the male, but so it's masculinized, but also not, because masculinized would mean larger, erectile, what have you, but it would never really mean that you reroute your entire birth canal through it, right?
Right. Right.
So it's this very unusual, it's a unique structure. Only the spotted hyena has it, so not other hyenas.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, so it presents challenges. It presents challenges to the male to mate through this structure. It presents even bigger challenges to females to give birth through this structure. So,
Wow.
where would you like to go from here?
Let's start from the internal parts. The birth canal that is, essentially a zigzag. Let's go into that. Let's go into that a little bit first.
So, the birthing process.
Yeah, let's do that.
Um, all right. Well, so for people to imagine with us, if you imagine a dog with the head facing one direction and the tail facing the other, what you would typically get in a female mammal is birth going towards the tail end in a relatively straight line,
Right.
right?
Okay.
And what happens in the hyena is that when the fetus is going towards the rear, it then has to make a right angle turn through the pelvis and go the opposite direction. And on this, if you imagine this animal as a male dog and imagine where the penis would be on this male dog, that is essentially where the clitoris is on the female.
Oh, so going
And
back towards
so,
the head.
yeah, going back to, so in other words, the introitus, the entry point, or the birthing canal point, instead of being close to where the tail would be, it's closer to where the belly button would be,
How does
Oh
that
my
affect
god.
the
right?
copulation? I'll use the right word.
Okay, so if we want to start from the beginning, from
Oh yeah, let's
mating,
start from the very beginning. Yeah, sorry.
It's a good
so
place.
having to give birth through this structure. So if you would look carefully at a baby male and a baby female, you would see that the opening in the female is ever so slightly larger than the opening in the baby male, but certainly not large enough to receive an erect penis through at the time of sexual maturity. And so the female experiences this hormone called relaxin, which helps sort of loosen the opening so that it can be large enough to receive a male during copulation. But the first thing you have to dispel from your imagination is that just because the female is capable of getting these full erections, it's not a sexual response in the female. So it's not like putting a pencil inside of a pencil. Instead, the female is completely flaccid during the act of mating, and she has these special retractor muscles that pull her phallus up and make it flush with the abdomen, kind of creating an like a vaginal aperture, if you will. But
Okay.
it's still very far forward,
Right.
right? Like I said, closer to the belly button than to the tail. And so for mating, the male hyena has to, I mean, his biggest challenge is that he has to achieve entry from a very forward position. So he has to squat down on his haunches and sort of scoot his posterior under the hyena to be able to achieve entry from that advanced position. So, male spotted hyenas are particularly well endowed because they have a longer trajectory. And in this regard, they have similarities with the male elephant because the female elephant also has this advanced introitus.
Oh wow.
Um,
Wow.
So he also it's flush, but it's still hard to. It's not a vagina, and so it's not as large as a vagina. So he still has to achieve. He still has to penetrate, and what it means is that he sort of has to get some leverage, and so to the trained eye, you can tell the difference between a male and a female hyena when their phallus is erect based on the contour that it has. So a female's contour will be rounded. She'll be slightly thicker, slightly shorter than the male with a rounded contour, and the male will be slightly longer, slightly thinner, and he will have a pointed contour as well as an indentation that kind of makes a hook right at the glands.
Oh
And
wow.
when he achieves erections, he actually has this flipping his erection performs these flipping motions, and that's sort of to locate where that entry is. And the little hook on his glands is to help him grasp and to basically achieve some footing. Um, and so, anyway, that's the part about copulation. Now,
Wow.
for a first time female, when she for a first time female, spotted hyenas actually have an unusually long gestation period relative to their other hyena cousins. So it's actually 110 days, which is 10 to
Oh
20
wow.
days longer than other hyenas. And what this means is that hyenas are actually born bigger than they should be for an animal of that size.
Oh
So
boy.
not only do they have a smaller opening, but they have a bigger fetus to give birth through, a birth to.
Fabulous.
Okay, yes,
Right.
it really just sounds like I mean, it seems like with Darwinism, it's like these animals should not exist between the mating
Right. I mean,
process.
it's the perfect argument against intelligent design because not only that, but they don't, most of us have an umbilical cord that's long enough to jump rope with, right? We have excess
Right.
umbilical cord. The spotted hyena's umbilical cord is not long enough for the journey.
Oh,
Um, given that right angle, I mean, not, it's too short. And so what happens in a female who's a mom for the first time, so she's pregnant but she's never given birth before, is that this fetus has to go through the pelvis, do a right angle turn, and then enter essentially a phallus, which is nothing like a uterus, right? So it doesn't have all of that musculature to propel the fetus.
oh, okay,
Right. So
yeah.
think of any mammal, female mammal, her uterus, those contractions are at their
Right.
maximal when a female is giving birth, right?
Right, right.
And
It's to
those
push it out.
contractions are what are pushing that fetus out. And instead, for
Right.
a female hyena, this fetus enters this phallus, and which doesn't have that uterine musculature to
Oh gosh.
propel it, on top of which the opening at the end is too small for this nearly 2 kilogram fetus to pass through. So, what ultimately has to happen for a first time hyena mom is that her clitoris needs to tear.
Ouch.
Eek.
And that pre tearing process can be delayed. So, if you think back to the fact that her umbilical cord isn't long enough, you've
So
got a fetus that is detached from the placenta
oh,
and therefore detached from its source of air.
okay, yeah,
Um,
so they're free diving essentially.
So,
yeah,
how
and
many
so
do you call them pups? I don't know. I don't know
She
what's
said
the word.
cubs.
cubs,
Let
cubs.
her finish. Let her
How?
finish. She's just talking about the mom, first
Yeah,
time mom.
it's
Let's
freaky.
finish her.
Wow. Go ahead.
I mean,
Go ahead.
Well,
again, you're blowing our minds here because it's like, how are they able to survive as a species?
So, what pushes the baby out? The baby out? Is
Gravity.
it
I'm
gravity?
well,
assuming.
the mom is bearing down. She's doing her best, and
Oh,
first
poor
time
thing.
deliveries are they're a little tough to watch. I gotta say.
Sounds kind of
So
brutal. I'm
she's
not gonna lie.
trying her hardest, but basically this cub can be lodged in this phallus for a fairly long time. And typically, hyena litters can be anywhere between one, two, three.
Mm.
And so the first one will have started this descent and will get stuck there. And perhaps the second one in line will also begin this journey and will soon also become detached from the placenta. So the clock is really ticking. And invariably, what happens in first time deliveries is that the first cub suffocates, it becomes hypoxic and suffocates while in the phallus. Eventually, the phallus tears, um, the fetus passes through. The mother does everything that she should do in trying to lick this,
Right.
clean
Revive
everything
it.
up. It's not going to be, it'll typically be stillborn. At times,
Oh.
the second one will also be stillborn. If it's a
Oh my
triplet
God.
litter, by the time the second one has gone through, once the clitoris is torn, it's ragged. It's not like an episiotomy, right? It's ragged and it stays that way. And so by the time the third one is born,
It just
it's
fall
much
out.
easier. It's basically coming out fine. So if it's a first time mom with a triplet litter, she could lose all three, but typically she will lose the first two, and the third might survive.
Yee.
That's
Once
brutal
that's
too.
happened, second time moms, as I said, because this tear is uneven, it remains torn. And so that's a little fun fact. You can always tell in the wild if a female has given birth before, not just by looking at whether she has a tear along this organ. Um, but after that, so this seems crazy, right? And
Yes.
yeah,
This seems like
it is.
science fiction. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, this seems like something someone wrote in a science fiction novel.
Right? Like you'd say, wait, that's not realistic. We can't have that.
Right, like some
Um,
sci-fi porno kind of thing.
but if you sort of step back and consider, so afterwards, females get pregnant and give birth, and it's kind of just like any other birth, right? Um, she still has the possibility of the fetus getting lodged in her pelvis if it's ultra big, right? So there's not just the risk to the cubs, but there's also the risk to the mom. But for the most part, it's that first delivery that's problematic. And if you put it in the context of other animals, a lot of first time moms lose their young
Yeah, I mean, even
through
humans. I mean,
inexperience or for whatever reasons. First time moms don't do so well rearing their offspring. So in the grand scheme of things, it might not be right. It might not be all that different, but it certainly gets your attention. And the striking thing is, oh my gosh, why would this how would this have evolved?
Who designed it?
yeah, who I would like to talk to the architect of this design, please.
S- So
As I said, against intelligent design.
in
Yeah, no
reproduction,
kidding.
is there sort of a breeding season, or are they constantly fertile? Do they have their period, or how
I
does
guess
that
the
work?
hyena periods.
Yeah. That's,
So I mean, they're like any other female carnivore. They have an estrus cycle, but it's not like we didn't study that very well just because it means getting a lot of blood samples from animals.
Ooh.
So it seems like a fairly straightforward question. You would think that we would have that information, but there's actually a lot that goes into detecting that makes it a little bit less logistically feasible than one might think.
so
Oh,
do they
okay.
try to have babies in the spring to?
So,
You
back to the breeding season.
yeah.
They're not. They don't have a breeding season, but there can nonetheless be periods in which births are more common, and that tends to reflect the availability of food. And
Sure.
so yeah, they're not seasonal per se, but you can
Mhm.
still see some evidence of seasonality.
Got it.
So I
Wow.
had a yeah, I know this is
It's
insane.
freaky.
So I had a question. I could be. I hope I'm not making this up, and I hope I heard this correctly. I think. Oh, and by the way, the Eternal Enemies, that was National Geographic 2006. So they probably need to update the documentary, anyways. But
It's
uh,
an awesome documentary, though.
oh, we're definitely gonna watch. isn't it that female cubs, what don't they get shot up with like an extra shot of testosterone in the womb or something that makes them more, aren't they like super super aggressive when they first come
Right.
out?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, yeah, go into that a little bit, please. Or yeah, explain that
So
to us.
so the female hyena, when she's pregnant, something very unusual happens, which is that
Besides the whole thing.
right, something additionally unusual that you wouldn't notice by looking at them, but if you were measuring their hormones, what you would also see is that their endocrinology is unusual. And it's unusual in the sense that females start producing a lot more testosterone when they're pregnant.
That's crazy.
So you have this female who's bigger, meaner, badder than the male, right? She's more aggressive, she's dominant, she plays harder, she engages in
She's a
scent
bad
marking.
bitch,
She,
as the kids would say.
she is, yeah, she's formidable. And that is linked to her exposure to androgens in utero.
Okay.
So if you were to pick a male and female adult at random, the male would have higher testosterone values than the female.
Sure.
Nothing surprising. But
Right.
if
That's basic
you,
bio.
well, yeah, I mean there are some species in which it differs, but
Right.
in the spotted hyena, you have that typical mammalian sex difference.
Right.
But things change when the female's pregnant. And what happens is that what accounts for this system partially in the hyena is that females produce a precursor androgen from their ovaries. And this precursor androgen is called androstenedione. Um, some might remember this from the Mark McGuire days, which is he was doping with androstenedione before
Oh,
it
do you remember
was
that, Dad?
illegal.
I remember him and Jose Canseco were.
And wasn't it Roger Clemens too? They all got popped
I
at the
don't
same
know.
time.
So
Well,
what
let's
this
let her
so
continue.
this androstenedione is just one metabolic step away from becoming testosterone
Oh, okay.
and one metabolic step away from becoming a potent estrogen. And whether it becomes one or the other is dependent on what enzymes are locally available.
Okay.
All this to say that the female produces this precursor from her ovaries when she's pregnant. The ovaries pump large quantities of this precursor, and the female's placenta has the necessary enzymes to, weirdly, change it not to estrogen like other female mammals would do, but to change it to testosterone. And that the that means that throughout pregnancy, her androgen concentrations are getting higher and higher, and her developing daughters are being bathed in this androgen soup, essentially.
So they're in like testosterone soup while they're in
They're
the
in
womb.
testosterone soup, absolutely.
Oh my
So if you
god.
measure a late term female when she's pregnant, she's got soaring testosterone
Right.
concentrations.
Right.
And those testosterone concentrations are acting on the developing daughters to cause them to be able to produce high testosterone when they're adult. And
Okay.
it acts on the developing brain to make females more aggressive and more badass and all of this. And it also acts to some degree on the genitals to account for the differences that you see between male and female hyenas.
Okay.
So it seems like a small distinction, but it's not what distinguishes the male hyena from a female hyena were she like another mammal, but just those differences that I was saying, longer, shorter, thicker, contoured, rounded, those differences are all due to the androgen concentrations.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. See, I was thinking they just got this shot at testosterone at the end, and it was like, okay, you're more aggressive, but they're bathing in it, for their whole
They're bathing
for
in it
months. It's my
for
gosh.
a long time, and the last trimester is when the brain is sensitive to those changes and sets her up to be more aggressive in adulthood. Earlier, those changes are affecting the daughter's developing ovaries, so that she in turn will produce more androgen when she's pregnant as an adult. And so it's what's called an epigenetic mechanism of inheritance.
Okay.
Um, it's not encoded in the genotype, but from the endocrine, the hormonal milieu that these fetuses develop in, it creates the opportunity for that hormonal milieu to show up in the next generation. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yeah. And now, do they get mitochondrial DNA from their mom like humans? Is that another like mammal thing,
They
or is that just
they're like
primates?
any other mammal in every other respect. They're
Okay.
so um yeah, they're they're only unusual in having this feature
Right.
of extreme female masculinization. And what accounts for the funky genitalia is a combo of genotype and endocrine exposure. But
Sure.
so it's a combo explanation for the genitals, but it's a hormone explanation for the behavior.
Okay. Okay. So I'm assuming when female cubs come out, they're just ready to go like WWF SmackDown, like let's go.
Correct. Right. And so, I was saying how these pups can start these cubs, one can be being born while the next one is in process,
Right.
right? We've actually gotten footage of a female giving birth, and it's her third in a triplet litter, and the first two are already out and they're fighting,
Oh my God.
right? They're fighting. They fight at birth.
I mean, you just came out of the womb and you're already fighting. Like,
They're
oh
already
wow.
fighting, and mom's trying to lick off the placenta, and she was taking a while, and we were sort of saying, well, gee, mom, hurry up, this. And there was no worry because the other two basically came in and started aggressing against the third born before it was even out of its placenta, and they ripped the placenta off for her. So yeah, they're born so remember when I said their gestation is longer?
Yeah.
Right.
So, I always give my students the cookie analogy that different species, you're either overbaked or a little underbaked. So the cookies either have a mushy inside or they have a
Right.
little brown around the edges. Well, hyenas are definitely brown around the edges. Um,
No
so
kidding.
they come out with their eyes open and their canines erupted.
Oh my God. They really are ready to go.
They are ready to go. So the longer they spend in the oven, the more developed and precocial they're going to be. And that by the same token, that longer time that they're spending in the oven is what's making them bigger and
Right.
harder to give birth to.
Well, I just learned a new word that I want to ask you about, which is, I
Oh
think
boy.
it's sororicide, which is sisters killing sisters. Do they participate in that?
Oh yeah, do cubs kill each
Yeah,
other?
it's more generally termed siblicide, which is that you would kill your
Siblicide.
sibling regardless of what sex it is. So, yeah, so that aggression was linked to reports of early siblicide.
Eek.
But the problem with that term is that it gives people the impression that it's just like you would see in birds where you have one chick that, tosses the other chick out of the nest and causes its immediate death, right? It's not like that in hyenas. What you have, imagine a triplet litter, because this is a good example. Another unusual feature about hyenas, because they have so many, is that they only have one pair of functional nipples. So
Oh
they
wait, that was
just
my other
have,
question too, actually. Thank you.
right.
Is
So they
the
have an
nursing.
inguinal set, so low down, they have one pair of nipples. And so if you have a triplet litter and you really only have two teats, those cubs are going to be fighting over access to the milk. And so what happens in these young hyenas is that, well, there's a home court advantage. So the first one born is going to have a little bit of a heads up over the next one born and will likely be the dominant. But these siblings vie for dominance, and that dominance relationship that gets established between these baby cubs right within the first day of birth will set up their dominance relationship pretty much for the rest of their life.
Okay.
Um, and so in a triplet litter, you can very well see that you would get two that would be stronger, that would keep attacking the third.
Oh,
And they do what's called this bite shake, which is to latch on with those erupted teeth at the nape of the neck and shake vigorously.
oh, so
And
literally to kill it.
eventually, well, you know, I mean, it
Dogs do that.
yeah, dogs do.
Oh,
It's a typical response, but what happens over time is that if you're constantly being bitten and shaken here, you will get open sores, you can get
right.
infections. You will be weaker if you don't get to the milk,
Is there
and
baby
over
shaking
time,
syndrome of hyenas?
Yeah, I was just going to ask about baby shaking syndrome, right?
no, they last for longer than that.
Oh
So
no.
it's not like siblicide immediate, and it's certainly not always the case, but
Right.
it's pretty much, I think, guaranteed that you're not going to get a triplet litter surviving in the wild. You'll get two. So you get litter reduction, but it happens over time.
Okay.
So
It's
do
not
you
like
think it's typically the first one is the dominant
Eh,
sibling?
I think the first one has a little bit the home court advantage, but it's not set in stone that the first one is going to be the one that wins. No.
that's
And you know, in a mixed sex litter, it's the female is going to emerge as dominant over her brother. If it's two sisters, they're going to vie for that dominance position. But it does get established early, and under normal circumstances, it sets them up for the rest of their relationships.
wow.
Well, it's a fascinating animal, and they've got a lot of interesting. It's amazing the species has survived. I say that about humans as well. um, and this was like that. What was that thing with the slime? That fish? What
For the
was that fish?
hagfish?
Hagfish. Yeah, this is.
Hagfish
You
was
don't even know about some of these things in the animal kingdom. It's just amazing uh, that the way they've evolved. I mean, how long do you think the spotted hyenas have been around? Do we know?
Oh yeah, they've had ancestors, you know, prehistoric times. So
Oh, so they've been
I'm
doing
not.
this for a long time.
Yeah, the only problem is that we know that there was an ant. So spotted hyenas are Crocuta crocuta, and they come from Pachycrocuta, which were basically the size of rhinoceros. Um,
Okay.
Wow,
but there's no way in the fossil record that you can tell whether this masculinization existed in those ancestors, because
amazing.
it's about the soft parts.
Right,
It
which don't
would
really get preserved.
which don't get preserved, and hyenas don't have the baculum or os clitorid. So some species have a bone in their penis or clitoris, and you can reconstruct some things from that. But spotted hyenas are a species that lack that.
Wow.
Amazing. All right.
Yeah.
So, well, no,
Well,
before we go here really quick, so I know that they've got like one of the strongest bite forces. I mean, they have like one of the strongest bites in the animal kingdom, and I know we talked about PSI, but it's estimated around 1100 PSI, and they can easily crush bone, and that their biggest predators and threats are lions. That they also hunt the same prey, humans, and then fun fact, they can run up to 40 miles per hour. And then I don't know if you ever saw this, and if you can corroborate this, but that the Maasai people leave their deceased to be consumed by hyenas. Is that like one sect of the Maasai people, or is that all of them, or did you ever
Well,
witness
that's
this?
more. Yeah, so that's less about the hyenas and more about certain tribal folks. It's not unique.
Right.
So people in Tibet leave their dead out to be consumed by scavengers. So it's
Oh,
not that they leave them out for hyenas per se. They leave
right.
them out for scavengers, and hyenas are among them. But so are lions.
Right.
So it's not unique to the hyena, and it's
Okay.
certainly not unique to the Maasai.
Sure.
And it just, I mean, it has more to do with not believing in the afterlife and having a more green form of disposal.
Yeah. Oh,
it
I
is
mean,
pretty green.
absolutely. It is. And then, so as far
Do
as
they eat the bones?
Yeah, we talked about that
Hyenas
last time.
do,
They
yeah.
crush bones.
Wow. All right.
It's bone powder. It's bone broth form. So then, as far as their conservation status, threatened, near threatened, endangered, what's their deal?
Well, if you go by the IUCN, they're going to
Mm.
be least concern, but I'm
Uh,
not a huge
okay.
fan of
Neither
attributing
are
a
we.
conservation status to something is not just motivated by the actual status of the animal. It's also motivated by politics of
Oh,
species conservation and
absolutely. And
whatnot.
which species is
So
popular at the time? Absolutely.
yeah,
We've
so I
addressed
don't
that
want
as
it, but
well.
basically my take, and I think the take of probably any large carnivore biologist, is that every carnivore on the planet is endangered or
Yeah,
soon to be endangered.
threatened for sure.
they're being exterminated. They come into conflict with humans. The lions are being poisoned in particular, but poisons
Eek.
are indiscriminate, so anything
Right.
around will eat it and die. I think the fate of large carnivores is
Dire.
dire, and so spotted hyena is least concern. But I think that that's really bad news to say those sorts of things, because it just makes people
Absolutely.
oblivious to the fact that
Right. Like, oh,
we're
they're
like,
fine. Whatever.
yeah.
Are any
So then,
people's using hyenas for food stuff or
oh,
Are
who
people
would?
eating hyenas?
Oh
yeah?
my
No,
god.
Okay.
no.
I would not want to eat that. So then, also really quick here, how many have you reared like yourself?
So me at two.
And you had them in your
Oh, so
house?
yeah. So this was I did tell you that I would come back to this, and this is what
Yes.
happens when you have a first time mom who has given birth to a not fully dead but mostly dead hyena
Oh
because of this
no.
difficulty, right?
Eek.
Oh,
So the hyenas that we raised, I was certainly not the only one, were all those pretty much deriving from problematic litters,
okay.
because they were first time moms. And once we knew what this was, what was happening, so this one of them was from a triplet litter. The first one was definitely dead. The second one was mostly dead, kind of like the Monty Python, not dead yet, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
then the third one was fine. And it was kind of my job to try to retrieve the body of the second one, so that we could make use of it, right,
Right.
without anesthetizing the mom or getting,
Right.
interfering. And I thought it was going to be dead until the third sibling latched onto it, started bite shaking it,
Oh.
and that produced a weak cry
Oh.
from the mostly dead second sibling. And so that sparked an intervention where we retrieved the animal, resuscitated him. And once you've done that, when you've removed the cub from the mom before they've had a time to bond through
Right.
nursing, you can't give them back.
Will
And
they kill it?
they will.
Oh,
And
we.
Eek.
so yeah, I mean, but that's not unusual. You've
Yeah, you've
interrupted
Yeah.
interrupted the
that
process.
bond,
Yeah.
and
I don't know
so
who
they
this
don't
is.
know. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No,
And
that makes
so
sense.
so those were the instances in which we would have to make a decision. If we could retrieve it and resuscitate it, then it was raised by humans by hand. And in the case that it had a sibling, so the hyena would come back to my house at night, and then I would bring it back to work the next day. And during the day, we would introduce it with its siblings so that it would have some proper hyena time.
So was there a hyena crate you had? Like, okay, you're going in your crate now, or did they sleep on a dog
Yeah, I mean,
bed?
it was a dog crate like any other. And the just like anybody who's ever had a puppy and thinks that they're going to crate it, and then of course you bring it home and it's absolutely adorable and it's whining for attention, and you think you're going to
Right.
leave it in this crate on a heating pad, and instead it starts whining, and so you bring it into bed with you, and ultimately they just sort of slept right there on your neck, um, with the body heat, and so let the bonding begin. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
they're
So
pretty
then,
darn cute.
that is so yeah, I mean, that's so how much of your house did they destroy though? Because puppies are very destructive. I can only imagine a hyena cub.
Well, it wasn't my house. I had land people, and they had told me that I was not allowed to have. They specified dogs and or cats.
Okay,
They
well, they
didn't
didn't say
specify
hyena. Yeah,
hyenas.
they didn't
They did
specify
not
hyena.
specify
So,
hyenas, and I
Right.
thought, well, this is going to be cool. I'll just bring it in quietly. But like at 5 o'clock in the morning, this hyena was doing it was hungry and it did this little baby whoop, but it was like,
oh,
you know,
oh,
and anyway, they could hear it, and ultimately they thought it was totally cool. So yeah, I brought it back for several months, but it did start tearing up the tile flooring,
Well,
which
you
I
could have
fixed.
just rocked the bed a little bit, and they thought maybe some stuff was going on. But anyway, we'll
okay.
leave that for another episode. All
But
right,
yeah, they can do damage for sure.
Yeah, I
Dr.
mean,
Dre,
that must have been
thank
so
you.
freaking amazing having a
My
little hyena.
pleasure.
So yeah, did that
They're so
were
cute
they
when they're black and new. I don't know when
yeah,
do they
they're
start to show their spots?
oh, yeah,
Oh well,
about
they
what
start
age?
getting they. Oh, it's a few weeks in. They start getting gradually. They get like eyebrows, and their face gets like first, and every stage of that is just absolutely adorable.
So were the half dead ones, I mean, for lack of a better term, were they kind of mentally handicapped, or did they have any developmental problems being
No,
half
no, they
dead?
were
Oh,
no.
okay.
It was just that we weren't. They were, yeah, just very weak. Um, and over the course of the history, I'm sure there were some that were not able to be resuscitated, but those that were did just fine.
Oh, okay. Wow. Oh my god. Thank you for sneezing into the mic. They're a very sturdy and hardy species. I mean, for all
They
that they have
are.
to go through, they're like a rock on
Wait a
four
minute, you heard
legs.
that? I put it on mute.
No, you did not put it on mute. You sneezed right into the mic. Thank
I
you.
pressed the mute button.
Obviously, you did not press the mute button. Yeah, now it's muted. That's great. That is so when you had so what happened with the two cubs that you raised? Was it hard to be like, okay, time for you to go do hyena things or
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, you maintain a special relationship with those cubs for the rest of your life.
so did they
Um,
recognize you as they got older or did you see them as they got
oh
older?
yeah, yeah, yeah. They definitely recognize. I mean, they would make a sound, a little squitter, it's called, which is a call that
Oh,
they make specifically for their mothers.
mommy.
Um, yeah, and so if they had a bad day, they would want to be comforted by their mamas. So they recognized our voices. So I would call out to them. The first of the ones I took care of was named Phoenix, rising from the ashes, and
Oh,
the second one was Winnie.
oh, cute.
Um, yeah, he was Eeyore's son, and yeah, they special place in my heart. Yep.
Oh, that's so awesome. So, okay, I know there's a picture of you online with one like giving you a kiss on the face. Is that the one of the ones that you?
That was Phoenix, and that was the day before I was taking him to a zoo. Uh,
Oh, oh,
yeah, so that was his goodbye day to people at the facility who had all participated in raising him, and so yeah,
oh. And they give kisses like dogs. Is that like the same kind of like affection or cleaning thing?
yeah, they're very intent on hairline, so eyelashes, eyebrows, um, and yeah. And
Oh,
then the,
that's
the
amazing.
yawning is because when you scratch them, it feels so good. The yawn is sort of
Like,
um,
oh, this is great.
yeah, it's a happy sign. Everybody thinks, oh, that looks like
Oh,
they're
it's
going to
baring
kill
its
you.
teeth. Ugh.
Yeah, no, no, no. It's a happy sign.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Dre. Thank you so much
Right,
for
we
coming back.
appreciate it.
We'll
Very
have to have you come
interesting
back and
animal.
have you talk about meerkats and were you studying lemurs too?
Yep.
Okay, we're gonna have to have you back for meerkats and lemurs for parts 2, 3, 7, and
All
three
right.
through whatever.
Sounds
Thank you
good.
so much. As
Thank
always,
you for your
send us
time.
My
send us an
pleasure.
email, justanimalspod@gmail.com. Find us on Instagram. If you have any questions for Dr. Dre, feel free to send them to us and we'll reach out to her. Thank you as always for listening and have a great evening or morning, depending upon where you are in the world.
All right. Do I need to do